Over the past year I've spoke about the great ports on the PSP. Those videos have since become my most watched videos on this channel, and it's easy to see why. For the time it came out, the PSP was way ahead of everything else that was out at the time, and even going into the 2010s was still able to do things no other portable console could do. Also, thanks to the next gen hardware, it was struggling to keep up with what the PS3 and 360 were capable of. In January of 2011, Sony announced their next portable console, simply known as the next gen portable, showing off the console running Uncharted. Obviously, we were looking at the PlayStation Vita, one of the most underrated consoles of all time. The Vita looked like the next step up for Sony's portable consoles, with dual analog sticks, enhanced multiplayer experiences like party chat, and of course being able to download apps, watch movies and even listen to music whilst playing your games, something even the PS3 struggled to do. There was even a 3G model, which meant you were able to play online and download games from absolutely anywhere. It truly was ahead of its time. Sadly, thanks to some bad decisions from Sony and the quick evolution of mobile gaming at the time, the Vita didn't stand a chance, and by around 2015, about 3 or 4 years after the release of the Vita, it was slowly but surely pushed to the side. Thankfully, in that time we got to see some amazing and groundbreaking ports, spin-offs and original games come to the handheld, which set out to do what the PSP offered all those years back, giving players as close to a console experience on the go as possible. So today I wanted to take a look at some of the most interesting ports the console had to offer. Now, I'm not saying these ports are either good or bad, but just interesting in the fact that they even exist and were brought over to a portable console in the first place. I'll be looking at what the original game had to offer on console, and the differences in the port, and also how they play on the Vita itself. So without further ado, let's take a look at some of the PS Vita's most interesting ports. The first game I'm going to talk about is something I didn't actually like when it released, and that is Need for Speed Most Wanted. And no, not that one. I'm talking about the reboot developed by Criterion that released on the Xbox 360, PS3, Wii U and PC in October of 2012. One of the main reasons I wasn't really a big fan of this game was simple. It just didn't feel like Need for Speed. Back in the 2000s, Black Box developed the majority of titles for the franchise, including the original Most Wanted and the Underground games. But by the 2010s, Black Box were occupied with the Skate franchise. Damn, Black Box had banger after banger. I wonder what they're working on next. Oh right, yeah, I forgot. EA. So with Black Box now working on something different, the Need for Speed series had to go somewhere else. And that was Criterion, best known for EA's other racing series, Burnout. So what happens when you give the developers of Burnout the Need for Speed IP? Well, they make a Burnout game. If the game was called Burnout Most Wanted, I wouldn't have any problem with it. But nowadays it seems like a lot of people online are reminiscing about this game, so I thought I'd give it another go. In Need for Speed Most Wanted, the objective is pretty similar to the original. Climb the blacklist, which is the top 15 racers in the city, which you have to challenge in order to get further up this list. Sadly, this version doesn't have nearly as much character as the original, but it does have these mental cutscenes though. The game's unique selling point is the fact you don't have to buy cars, you simply just find them on the map, pull up to them and switch, with each car having its own unique set of races and upgrades for you to unlock. There's a lot of content here. The base game only has about 43 cars in total, but it's quite a varied list and doesn't get too stale. Sadly though, you don't get to customise the cars visually at all. The only thing you can do is drive through a petrol station and change the colour. The map is great, also having a lot of fun areas and insane jumps to find. It really does feel like a spiritual successor to Burnout Paradise. Of course, the actual gameplay is great too. Like I said, it feels like a Burnout game, and that's not a bad thing. The Burnout games are great, and so even though Need for Speed Most Wanted isn't my favourite game in the series, I still think it's a great Burnout game. So how's the Vita version? Well, I'm shocked to say that the Vita version of this game has absolutely everything the console version had. That includes the whole map, all the cars, all the races, even the multiplayer elements. This is essentially a direct port of the whole game, which just shows how capable the Vita truly was. It's hard to even notice any differences between the two versions, other than obviously the graphics, but even the Vita version doesn't look bad, especially being played on a much smaller screen. Obviously the lighting and reflections have taken a massive hit, but the car models still look great, so does the map overall. When driving around in free roam, the FPS seems okay. It looks like it's running at or just below 30, but then you get into a race and that's when things get a bit choppy. Is it still playable? Well, just about. You really have to try and get used to the frame rate to try and enjoy this game, which I know a lot of people will just be put off with straight away. I wouldn't say the game is unplayable. To be honest, the Vita didn't have a lot of standout racing games, so Need for Speed Most Wanted stands out quite a bit. Even though the frame rate can get quite choppy, especially in the races, it still amazes me that Criterion managed to get it running on the Vita. It's the full game, with no compromise to its content or gameplay. I still think it's one of the most impressive ports of any game, still to this day. The next game I'm speaking about really doesn't need any introduction. It's Borderlands 2, developed by Gearbox and released on the Xbox 360, PS3 and PC in September of 2012. The Borderlands series has become one of the most successful RPG/FPSs of the last 15 years, with tons of sequels and spin-offs, but I don't think any game in the series has quite the impact Borderlands 2 had. It made the series a household name and is seen as one of, if not, the best game in the series. For those of you that have no idea what Borderlands is, that's right, I'm speaking to about 3 of you here. The game is essentially an RPG based looter shooter with a whole lot of character in between. You play as one of 4 classes out on a quest to find something called the Vault, which obviously isn't as straightforward as you might have guessed, with tons of quirky characters to meet and quests to complete. Borderlands 2 is known for a lot of things, mainly its great cast of characters and great script, but also it's just always been fun to play, nothing but absolute carnage on the screen. And you have thousands, yes thousands of guns to find, all with their own quirks and ammo types. I remember playing this game back in the PS3 days with a friend, and it honestly consumed most of my Christmas break in 2012, with hours upon hours spent just having an absolute blast. I also own the game on every console I have, including the version we're talking about today. So all the way back in 2013, they announced the game would be coming to the Vita, which I just couldn't believe. How the hell would they get this massive open world RPG running on a portable console? This was way before the Switch and the Steam Deck, so having announcements like this blew my mind, and of course as soon as it released, I bought it day one, based solely on my curiosity of how the game would run, if anything. So how did it run? Well, first thing I need to touch on is the load times. As you can imagine, they are quite long. From the first loading screen to actually playing the game, it took just under 2 minutes, and on my Steam Deck it takes less than 45 seconds. It's probably not fair to compare it to a Steam Deck considering it has a modern SSD, and to be honest, I'm not even that mad at long loading screens. The fact that the Vita can even load the game up in the first place is a miracle. Once you load into the actual game, you'll notice straight away the graphical downgrade, but in all honesty, it still looks like Borderlands 2. The render distance is pretty impressive, and the guns, whilst they are a bit blurry, still stand out massively, just like the console version. Once you've played for a while, you kind of forget how bad it looks in comparison, and it just looks like Borderlands. The shell shaded graphics definitely help in this situation, but once you walk around a bit, you obviously have to start shooting, then another problem appears. If there is more than one enemy on the screen at once, the game just can't cope, the frames drop and makes the game close to unplayable. You kinda have to just power through the frame drops. Thankfully the developers were fully aware of this, so you'll only ever see 3 enemies on the screen at once, and once you take them out, they just explode into a red mist, leaving all the loot behind. This does however really affect boss fights, as these are quite obviously a big part of the game. They are the main event of each level, so in the console and PC version they are chaotic and insane, and on the Vita they are still chaotic but for all the wrong reasons. The amount of enemies on screen has been brought down drastically, but also the frames just absolutely tank, which again means you're just fighting the frame rate more than the actual boss. I don't want to be all negative though, because I mean this is the whole of Borderlands 2 on a Vita. All the quests, all the guns, all the locations, and even some DLC bundled in as well. I think it's really hard to get across just how impressive this is, considering you can play this game on things like the Switch Lite, which is only a bit bigger than the Vita, and that version is the full console release, but this is still just insane to me. I want to talk about controls as well. The fact that this still feels like Borderlands is quite impressive. Obviously the Vita had dual analog sticks, unlike the PSP, but it was still missing a few inputs, most notably R2 and L2, R3 and L3. Which are pretty important in FPS games, but Sony's answer to this was the rear touchpad. Now, this thing is the absolute devil. It just gets in the way, as when you hold the console as any normal human would, but for some reason playing this game with them is absolutely fine. You have 2 functions on the back, one side for sprinting and the other side for melee, which I suppose pressing either of these accidentally doesn't really matter all too much. And other things like grenades and your special ability are on the touchscreen, which don't feel as fluid, but still not too bad. Is Borderlands 2 on the Vita a good port? Well, no, it's not. The frame rate is unbearable, load times are terrible, and you can play the console version of this game on most modern handhelds. But still, I think this is one of the most impressive ports I've ever seen. Gearbox and Iron Galaxy really didn't need to do this, but the fact that they did just shows how talented the people who worked on it were. This port should really not exist, but despite all its flaws, I'm so glad it does. When it comes to fighting game ports on the Vita, there are actually quite a few options. You have the likes of Mortal Kombat 9 and Street Fighter Cross Tekken, but today I wanted to talk about a fighting game I've always liked, and that is Dead or Alive. You see, growing up I was a massive Tekken fan, but in the early 2000s I had an Xbox, which meant I couldn't play that series and needed another 3D fighter to take its place. Thankfully I had Dead or Alive 3 to play and instantly loved the series from there on out, until I got PS2 again and was able to play Tekken 5.
I don't want to play with you anymore.
But I still played every entry, and that of course meant Dead or Alive 5 on the PS3. I enjoyed the game, but I just didn't have the same attachment to it as I did with 3. The gameplay and graphics were outstanding, but the story was just a bit mental. Well, I mean, the story in all these games is a bit mental, if I'm being honest. Here's an example. One minute you're fighting in New York, and the next, with absolutely no explanation, you're in Antarctica. Literally no cutscene or anything, you just rock up there. I had to check to see if I missed a chapter or something, but no. But with all the mental story out the way, DOA 5 is still a fun fighter. I've always liked the gameplay of DOA. It's one of those games that is super simple to pick up and play, but at the same time it makes you feel like you're a pro. So how well did this game translate to the Vita? Really well, in fact. The game doesn't even look much different from the console version. The only time you can really tell is the close-ups of the characters after you win, but when you're in actual gameplay, it's really impressive in comparison. The gameplay has not been compromised whatsoever. That includes a smooth frame rate throughout, the load times aren't bad, and overall DOA 5 is just a solid fighter on the Vita. The game also has some interesting features. First of all is the touchscreen mode, where you play in first person and use a touchscreen to fight. It's a little gimmicky, and once you've played it once, it gets a bit old quickly, but still a nice little addition to the game. When I was actually doing research for the game, I found the official website which said you can use your favourite DLC costumes in touch fight mode, followed by these screenshots. Right, I've tried to avoid the weird part of the series and just focus on the game, but yeah, the series can get a bit coded when it wants to. The game also had some great cross-platform inclusions as well. Most surprisingly, cross-platform play mean you could play online against PS3 users, which just goes to show how close this port was to the console release. You could also cross-save as well, but most importantly the game offered a cross-buy feature for DLC, which means if you bought any DLC on the PS3, that would instantly be transferred to the Vita version, which given the sheer amount of DLC the Dead or Alive games have is a blessing, but I can't say I've ever bought any DOA DLC because I don't want to be put on a register. All in all, Dead or Alive 5 is just a great fighting game on the Vita. It's the only game I'm talking about today that runs smoothly throughout, whilst also looking just as good as the console release. And in a way, just like DOA 3 back on the Xbox, there was no Tekken release on the Vita, so this game was the perfect substitute in the 3D fighting genre. And no, this bag of shit does not count as a Tekken game. Right then, before you start commenting down below on how this is not a direct port, I obviously know this isn't Call of Duty Black Ops 1. Still, I wanted to talk about it for the longest time because it is one of the craziest versions of COD to exist, and apparently the game did start life as a direct port of the original Black Ops, but due to time constraints the game was turned into a sort of spin-off. I mean, that would have been insane if we would have gotten the original Black Ops with its campaign, zombies and multiplayer all playable on the Vita. Call of Duty Black Ops Declassified released alongside Black Ops 2 on November 13th 2012 and was developed by Nihilistic Software and will be the last game they developed under this name because for some reason this game was absolutely trashed by critics, which I mean, the game isn't perfect, but giving it a 0.5 out of 5 seems a bit harsh. It's at least a 2. So yeah, the console version of Black Ops 1. Well, luckily I've got a full video on that game on my channel if you want to check it out after this video, but for right now all you need to know is it's a Call of Duty game. There's a lot of shooting, a lot of crazy set pieces, and a lot of screaming in online matches. This game though is one of my favourites in the series, thanks to its great immersive campaign, really well designed and full multiplayer, and of course, the legendary zombies mode. I still don't think I've had an attachment to a Call of Duty game as much as this one. It truly is one of the best in the series. So what about Declassified? Well, it's obviously not the same game. The campaign is completely different, the multiplayer tries its hardest to give you that multiplayer experience, and there's no zombies, which is just unforgivable. I mean, the fucking DS even had zombies. The campaign follows the same characters from the original game, taking on different covert operations, which are loosely tied to the story of both Black Ops games. But in all honesty, it's really forgetful. There's no cutscenes, just those little trademark COD videos that play before missions to try to progress the story. But all in all, there's not much to go off here in terms of actual missions though. The game has about 10 missions altogether, which are a few minutes long, obviously done due to the fact the PS Vita was portable. The idea being people would only play this on the go, so they couldn't make the missions too long, which I think is BS, because fucking Borderlands 2 exists on this thing. The whole campaign is as generic as you can get. Go here, breach in slow motion, take out the enemies, go here, breach in slow motion, and take out these enemies. Speaking of the enemies, they are absolutely brain dead. I don't know who programmed them, but they are just the stupidest AI I've ever witnessed in a video game. They are the video game equivalent of those AI slop flyers you see all over social media. They go into cover and just shoot at the wall. they're hiding behind. It does make the game feel a bit cheap, I've got to be honest. Thankfully, Nihilistic did an absolute amazing job of porting over the gameplay of COD to the Vita, as this game feels just like a console game. Obviously it's not as responsive and some inputs had to be moved around, but in terms of actually playing it, it's great. So even though the campaign is a bit forgetful, I think the classic COD gameplay on the go makes up for it. In terms of visuals, well, what can I say? It looks like Black Ops 1. I remember playing this for the first time and being absolutely blown away by just how much it looks like the original game. The maps in multiplayer are the best examples, as they basically use the same maps as the original game, plus the gun models have the same amount of detail as well. I think without the HUD on the screen, if you took a screenshot of the gameplay, you could easily convince someone it's just Black Ops 1. Now, originally, when I was going to talk about multiplayer, I was going to comment on how it's easier to find a match on this Vita game than it is the original Black Ops 1 or 2, but thanks to the recent releases of those games on PlayStation, there's been a resurgence on each platform, so that's no longer the case. But still, you can find multiplayer matches on a Call of Duty game on the PlayStation Vita in 2026. That in itself is just incredible. I'll be honest, the multiplayer is a chaotic mess. The spawns are absolutely broken and the input lag sometimes just breaks the game. But my god, this takes me back. It just feels like one of those golden era Call of Duty games. You can create a class with all the perks and attachments, pick kill streaks, and all the maps are based on the original set of maps, just smaller versions. Like instead of Nuketown, you get Nuke House, and even Shipment from COD 4 makes an appearance. The game only has 6 maps in total, and the matches only consist of a 4v4, but it makes sense for a portable version of Call of Duty. It's fast paced and every map feels like a classic TDM on Nuketown. Of course, the game also has a levelling up system and prestiges, which I'm really curious to know if anyone ever got max prestige on this game. If they did, they deserve a medal. The multiplayer only had 4 modes in total, these being TDM, Free for All, Kill Confirmed and Drop Zone, which is similar to Hardpoint in the main games. Overall, I still think the multiplayer is really impressive. They really did try to capture a mainline console Call of Duty game on the Vita, and I don't think they were far from it. I mean, there's still people playing this game online right now, so I think that gives you all the information you need. The last thing I wanted to touch on was obviously the big lack of zombies. Instead we got Hostile mode, which is very similar to Survival from MW3, but sadly this mode has about as much depth as a Ready Salted Crisp. It's just so forgetful. It's wave based, with each round consisting of a few more enemies each time, with no way to upgrade things like attachments, perks or kill streaks. You just get a random care package at the end of every round, which 90% of the time is just ammo. It's honestly so boring. The only reason I played it back in the day is so I could try out the multiplayer maps when I had no internet. I'm so gutted we never had zombies mode, and instead got this snooze fest. But thankfully the Vita has a massive homebrew and modding community, so no zombies is no problem in 2026. You have things like the fan-made NZP, which is a fan-made recreation of COD Zombies, full of custom maps made by a talented community, and very recently someone has managed to port the Android version of Black Ops Zombies over to the Vita, meaning you can play Kino, Ascension and Call of the Dead all on the Vita, so you kinda have the full Black Ops experience on the go, finally, 14 years later. Black Ops Declassified is such a fun and quirky entry into the Call of Duty franchise. Nihilistic really did try to bring the classic feel of the series over to the Vita, and I think they succeeded. Obviously the campaign and survival mode lacked depth of the console counterparts, but the multiplayer really had everything you needed to get your COD fix on the small screen. Looking back, I don't think it deserved the hate it got. It wasn't perfect, but it still tried to give players the console experience in the palm of their hands, just like the Vita itself. So that's it for today. Let me know what you think of these ports, and let me know if there are any ports I should look at in the future. I haven't even scratched the surface when it comes to Vita ports, so if you want a part 2, let me know in the comments below. That's it from me today. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing, and as always, I'll see you when I see ya.